researching this overpass, which is actually for animals. It helps animals cross from one part of the forest to another and obviously protects them, but it also protects drivers from hitting animals at highway speed.
Welcome back to Roadworthy. It's Sarah. So the wildlife overpass is actually not too far from Seattle, and it's really cool. I mean, they've had all kinds of animals crossing, so bears, cougars, elk, deer, um, coyotes, all kinds of different critters. So it's been a big success. The other thing that's kind of cool is there's an underpass very close by. So they've been able to study if animals prefer the underpass or the overpass. So, for example, they've learned that coyotes will not use the underpass. So deer and elk don't seem to care. And in fact, they have footage of deer, grazing up on the overpass and elk sleeping in the underpass. So super cool. I have seen a few of those wildlife overpasses in other parts of the West. I'm trying to think of where, but it seemed more for like cattle crossing more than wildlife crossing, like out in like Wyoming or South Dakota or someplace. So I could be completely wrong there. But anyway, it's been a success, and I think it'd be super cool if there were more of them. But it's expensive. So it's hard to put a couple $1,000,000 in your budget for wildlife overpass. So, I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, that's not why you're here. You're here to hear about some books. So, what did I finish this week? Let me clear space and get my notes out. Let me get myself together. First up was Yukio Mishima's Life for Sale. This was published in Japan in 1968. This, which I think the cover is perfect for the 1968 vibe. This version was translated by Stephen Dodd, in 2019. Reading it wasn't clear to me if this was published into English for the first time in 2019 or not. Anyway, this was this is so apparently this is supposed to be quite a departure from Mishima's other work. I read somewhere that this was being written at the same time that he was writing his Sea of Fertility tetralogy that is considered, a masterpiece of 20th century Japanese literature. In this, he was sort of writing as his own entertainment. But I read that in a review, but I haven't seen that in, any place else. So I'm not actually sure if that's true. But anyway, this is about Hanyo Yamada, who in the very opening pages has a failed suicide attempt. And he decides that he's going to quit his, salary job as an, ad writer. He decides to put his life up for sale so that anybody can purchase him to do whatever they want. He doesn't care. And he is this very apathetic, nihilistic character. And this is also written in the third person. So as a reader, you're incredibly distanced from his, any interiority or it's you're so distanced. It's hard to be very invested in him as a character, and also, it's interesting. By committing suicide and being willing to, sell his own life, he's not only is he sort of forsaking any responsibility for his life, but he's forsaking any responsibility for his own death. And so he's incredibly apathetic. And so what this book then becomes is this series of episodes where different people come and hire him for various things. So, you've got the jealous husband. You've got, suddenly there's like, he gets roped into some organized crime shenanigans. There's, spies and poisoned carrots. And there's even a vampire. And Mishima does make an attempt to sort of bring all of these disparate situations, wrap them together. But it's hard for me to tell, was this meant to be funny? Was this just supposed to be like bonkers and weird and you're going along for the ride? Like, it almost felt like, I used to watch Monty Python as a kid. And, some of those skits are like crazy funny. And some of them you're just like, huh? And so I felt like this, like, is there something just culturally not translating here? So, I wasn't quite sure what Mishima's intent here was. It was a little absurdist, which I don't know. It didn't turn out to be as fun for me as I was hoping. Thankfully, it is pretty short and it just clips along. So this one, I would say, I think like the very first like situation he gets into is probably in the first 20 pages. So you could very quickly tell if this book was going to be for you or not. One thing that was a little bit not disturbing, but like jarring in this book was it's incredibly sexist. It's almost like, in James Bond films where he just randomly has sex with any attractive female. Kind of the same thing happens in this book. He has, I think, sex with every female that shows up on the page, except for one. She dies, and he concludes she died because she wanted to have sex with him, but there was no way he was going to do that because she was old and ugly. So I couldn't decide again, was he like poking fun at like that James Bond trope? Like, or, this was written in 1968. Like, was he that incredibly sexist? So that's all I finished. I am super duper close to finishing my audiobook, which is Half a Lifelong Romance by Eileen Chang, and I'm loving it. So I will say more about that next week. On the nonfiction front, I'm reading Crip Kinship by Shayda Kafai. This is Disability Justice and Art Activism of Sins Invalid. Sins Invalid is they describe themselves as a performance project. for disabled, queer persons of color. So this is an interesting read, and I will say more about this next week. And then lastly, I picked up yesterday The Secret Diaries of Charles Ignatius Sancho by Paterson Joseph. This book was longlisted for the Walter Scott Prize this year, and so I heard about it from Katie at Books and Things. Katie always reads along with the Walter Scott Prize. I would love to read along with the Walter Scott Prize too. So, well, I fantasize about it. I'm not sure I'd ever actually do it, but a lot of the books aren't published in the United States, so I could be ordering them from England, but I'm just like, that's, I don't know, work. Anyway, Charles Ignatius Sancho was a real person. He was born in 1729. He was a black man born in the Caribbean to slaves, and is sent to England to live with three unmarried sisters. And it goes on from there. That's sort of where I am. I haven't looked him up at all, but just from the flap, it says that he was the first black person to vote in Britain, and he was a leading abolitionist in Britain. So stay tuned. That's it. That's what I got going on this week. Yeah, let me end it there. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you next week.